Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay. I am your resident culture warrior, your resident maker of trouble. So I came across this article, and it sort of piggybacks onto the other video I did regarding the Rings of Power. So let's get right into it. This one's coming to us from comicbook.com, and it says the Rings of Power stars talk a shift after racist backlash. Once again, we are starting off from a position of if you criticize the show, you are inherently a racist. Uh, from the moment casting for Amazon's The Lord of the Rings of Power was announced, certain corners of the internet reacted with racist attacks and backlash against the series cast, creators, and even viewers of the streaming series. Didn't know that. The backlash prompted an official statement condemning the relentless racism from the series as well as support from the series cast. Okay, hold on. The backlash prompted an official statement condemning the relentless racism from the series, as well as support for the series cast from the cast of the original films, who took to social media to share a message that all are welcome here. Now, the cast of The Rings of Power are speaking out about how the conversation has shifted, noting that while there's still backlash and controversy, noting that there's still backlash and controversy. Sorry about that. Just the fact that quote the fact that the attention was shifted towards the show towards that shows you what the power of shows like this is, um, unquote, said Ismael Cruz Cordova, who plays Arondir, told Variety. The fact that it hit that nerve and that our being in it created such a response just brings attention to the greatness of fantasy, the greatness of Lord of the Rings, and why it's actually good that we are here. Did it become a bit too much? Absolutely. It's taken airtime from the depth of who we are as artists, but it just shows you where we are in the world and how much work we still have to do. I'm just very grateful that it's us who are able to recalibrate, break form, reshape, and make history, unquote. Cynthia Adai Robinson, who plays Muriel, added that in terms of the impact of the dialogue and the series, they're in the middle of the process, but it's been an important moment to be part of. Quote, in order to not have such an impact, the pendulum has to swing. We are right in the middle of that process. We just want to normalize, Adai Robinson said. We do have to discuss it because we are now in a space in society where need to now and again acknowledge exactly what is happening. That level of distraction or aggression that was put towards us, it has been a painful journey to get there, but it has elevated us. It has put us in a position where there will be a plaque one day when the pendulum has swung to where it needs to be. We will have badges upon the people who fought the great fight in order to get to a point where there isn't such an eruption based solely on that. When a casting announcement comes, solely on that when a casting announcement comes. While it has been a challenge, it has been a phenomenal moment to be a part of. Doors are open and accessibility and availability for absolutely everyone to feel safe within a franchise and a story of this scale. It's been really important and empowering. Tears have been shed, blood has been spilled, metaphorically, but we are here. And there has even been some overall shift already. Sophia Nomvete, and y'all correct me in the comments if I'm butchering any of their names. I'm not intending to. Sophia Nomvete, who plays Disa, said that even though there is continued controversy, there's also been some apologies as well. To answer your question, we still get a ton of controversy, but there has been a shift, Nomvete said. You know what there's been? It feels like there's been a sit down. It feels like we had to prove ourselves almost. We had to defend ourselves. But it's undeniable that these people are in the position that they are in deserve to be there and should be there. There is nobody else that could have played the role. I genuinely feel there has been a shutdown. I genuinely feel there has been a shutdown, I even had apologies, which I love, even if it were just one person acknowledging that that frame of mind was wrong. Who stars in the Rings of Power? Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne developed the Rings of Power for Prime Video, inspired on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien and set in the second age of the world of Middle Earth. The show's cast includes, okay, and then they just list the cast. Okay. Um, I mean, I'm not going to knock them for how they feel. I mean, they're entitled to feel how they feel. But my issue is it's, and I've said it before in other videos, and I'll say it again. And I understand that not everybody will agree with my particular take on it, and that's fine. You don't have to. Um, I don't see pointing out where a character is being changed for to conform to modern politics. Okay, I don't see how me as the consumer, as the target audience for said show, how me pointing out that, hey, you're changing this and not for a valid reason, is racist. Okay, again, and I mentioned it in the other video that I shot today. um you know, I have no problem with people of color being in Tolkien, and I think there is room for it, and I think there's untapped story potential that could be built around actors and actresses of color, um, and it would still conform to the lore and what Tolkien wrote. And I mentioned what I, as a Tolkien fan, something I would have loved to have seen would have been the journey of the two blue wizards going to the east and, you know, going to Rune and going down to Harad, you know, and the Haradrim, and what happens there and how they try to prevent those peoples from following Sauron, and sort of trying to set up these sort of, you know, rebellious factions going against the majority of people who were coming under the sway of Sauron. And you could have done both of those with largely non-white casts and largely non-white main characters, okay, the stars of the show. And I would, as a Tolkien fan, I would have loved to have seen that, because I don't need to see somebody that looks like me to identify with a character if the character's written well. The problem that most people had with Disa and Arondir and stuff is there's no there's no lore related way to justify what they've done. As I've pointed out, strictly from a scientific standpoint, from a biological standpoint, okay, you would not have black dwarves if they live underground in mountains. Okay, just biologically, there is no natural biological imperative to have dark skin if you are living in an environment that does not get a lot of sunlight. Or people have darker skin tones as a direct result proportional to how much time they spent out in the sun. Okay, that, you know, that's why different ethnicities have different skin tones. So for a group of people, i.e., dwarves, who live underground in essentially hollowed out mountains and stuff, they would not be out in the sun very much. Therefore, biologically, there would be no imperative to develop dark skin. Okay, it just wouldn't be there. So then, if you factor that in with Tolkien stated purpose was to give the British Isles a mythology of their own. Okay, you know, so it's a largely Caucasian, you know, land, and he's trying to build them a mythology, a myths and legends of a Caucasian people. You would expect most of what is in his writing to be Caucasian people. Okay, he explains that elves are fair in appearance. Okay, and what that means is it means both beautiful and attractive, as well as he describes them their skin as being fair. Okay, they're light skinned. Okay, and So when you come in and you just change that for the sake of conforming to modern 2022 21st century, you know, political norms, yeah, the fans are going to react to that and they're going to point that out. And that doesn't mean that they're racist, and it doesn't mean that they're gatekeeping, okay, Tolkien, and it doesn't mean that they don't want to see people of color. It just means that the reason you're doing it is apparent, okay, and it's insulting to people, okay. There's lots of movies that have characters that are race swapped that you never hear a peep about. You never hear a single peep about. I could right off the top of my head, uh, the Will Smith movie where he's the last guy on the planet with those the sort of vampire creatures. Oh, why is the name escaping me right now? Um, uh, shoot, you know the movie I'm talking about. Um, well, that's a story that was written in the 1960s, I believe, by the same guy who wrote Blade Runner. Um, and in the original story, that character is white. Okay, in the book of L, I believe, was the other movie, um, where I forget who the actor was. It's been such a long time since I've seen it. But again, that was another case where in the original story the character was white, and in the movie they make the character black. And you know what? Nobody cared. It because it didn't make a difference, and it was before it wasn't like the studio beat you over the head with we're making him this ethnicity because it's 2022 and we just want to. Nobody cared. Nobody did. A good example to shut down the quote unquote racist backlash is the fact that simultaneously to the Rings of Power coming out, you had House of the Dragon come out. House of the Dragon also race swapped characters. Okay, Corlys Valerian and the Valerians played by black actors and actresses. Okay, and initially people said, "Well, wait a minute, you're changing this." Okay, and even I was like, "Okay, this is another case of Hollywood race swapping for the sake of checking off boxes." Um, but then I found out two things. The first thing being is that the producers of the show actually spoke to the author. They spoke to George R. Martin and said, "Hey, listen, we this is what we want to do. Okay, are you okay? Are you on board with this?" And George R. Martin said, "Sure, okay. It doesn't affect the overall outcome. So, as long as you're not breaking the story, go for it." Okay, so if the author of the story is saying it doesn't matter what race they are, I mean, you have to take it for what it's worth, right? He knows better than anybody. He created the characters. And number two, the characters are just good characters. They're well written. Okay, it's there's no tokenization, to use the word, um, going on there. It's just good characters, and they are played, you know, by black actors and actresses, and who cares? It's good characters. I'm more involved and invested in the story and the characters that their ethnicity, their racial makeup is not something that's a big deal. And that being out simultaneously with Rings of Power sort of sets the juxtaposition. So you can't say that fans being upset that you're casting, you know, black actors and actresses to play dwarves and elves and Tolkien, and even though the fans are giving you these valid reasons as to why you shouldn't be doing this, you're like, no, it's just racist because you don't want to see people of color. But at the same time, these very same fans are looking at House of the Dragon, where characters are race swapped, and saying this is totally okay because it doesn't affect the story. You're not changing the lore. The author of the story has said go for it. Okay, and they're well written, well rounded, and done good. And so there's none of that it's being pushed on you aspect of it. And I'm tired of the fact that you know I can point out you know why a black dwarf doesn't make sense. That shouldn't automatically make me a racist, because I honestly, if me having that opinion makes me a racist, then I don't know what to tell you. Then you're watching the wrong YouTube channel. I I don't think that you know the I I think that the characters should fall within the lore. Okay, and I do believe, and I'm saying this, I do believe that there is room for people of color in Tolkien's Middle Earth. Okay, and you can do it in a way that holds to the lore. Okay, and still have these great stories and great characters of color without having to just trash the lore. And I think there's a way to do it. And I think if you really cared about an issue like that, that's what you would do. You wouldn't try to shoehorn things in just to check boxes off at Amazon HQ because they've got a new policy and you have to adhere to it. And that's what happened with this show. And that's why a lot of the fans, pushed back against it and calling them racist, calling them whatever phobes or whatever doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day they saw why you were doing what you did, they saw what you did and why you did it, and they pushed back against it. And that's not a problem on them, that's a problem you got to ask yourself. you know am I really helping anybody by just checking a box? If that's my only motivation, anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I think it's a good topic for discussion. I think you know people that are into lore and high fantasy, as it's often referred to, we can have a good civil discussion down in the comments section below. I know it's some people, it's a sensitive subject, and that's fine. Um, I would just ask that as long as we keep the comments polite and respectful, everybody's opinion is equally as valid. Okay. So I would love to hear what you guys think about this one. Do you think that injecting 21st century, I don't know, racial politics into the lore of something like Tolkien or any other lore for that matter, um, do you think that's a good idea? Do you think it should be done? Do you think it's an insult to the people of color? Because what you're saying is just like, okay, we just got to stick some of you in here, so we can check off our virtual signal boxes. It how do people of color feel about this? Like, on the one hand, maybe they want to see representations of themselves. Maybe on the other hand, they're like, hey, don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Do it because you think you should. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I can rant about this all day and all night. So, I will talk to you on the next one. Remember, if you like the video, hit the like button. If you could, please share the video, hit the bell for notifications. But more importantly, please subscribe because it helps the channel. I'm trying to build this thing, and so far you guys are knocking it out the park, and I'm loving you for it. So anyway, hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.